All right, with this demo, I'm just going to be finishing up and submitting the painting project. When you take some time between your painting sessions, though they can be arduous, you'll notice when you open it up again, certain things pop out at you. And I'm very happy with the head. I'm happy with all the choices there. I'm not so happy with this collar. I think it's bizarre. And so you set everything up, you find your brushes, and you might set up a new layer, and then you can just start painting it out. I'm going to turn off the background just so I can see it clearly. And then start repainting some of this neck. At a 100% opaque brush, I'm on a new layer here. So what's nice about that is it's just very direct. I can be very confident. I'm not just trying to tweak it. Since I'm on a new layer and I can play with how strong that layer is through opacity or blending modes later, I don't need to be subtle. Especially as I'm kind of just redrawing certain aspects. Now, in order to erase, at this point, I would need to turn off that background layer as well. Go to the very top, hold down Option, and say Layer Merge Visible while holding down Option, and that will compress all of those painting choices onto one 100% layer in the background. While still, because I held down Option, still keeping all of these other layers that I've used, many different layers. And because it's all on one layer now, I can use my eraser, and I can actually use a certain brush with my eraser that I can use certain dynamics with, the same kind of things we've been using over and over again. And even though it's at 100%, that will give me a more believable control. And then I might go and turn my background back on to see how that erasing is really working out. And that allows me to kind of shave off some of these extra paint marks that aren't so useful in a way that still looks fairly organic to the paint textures. So just finishing it off. Any lines that look too crisp, I can use this textured eraser to fix. Let's see, I think I need some angle jitter there, so it's not always so flat. There we go. And now whenever I go back to the eraser, it will give me these options. So I can continue to use this to refine at the edges. Kind of bite away at it a little bit. But back to painting. To me, faces make sense. They have a structure, they have anatomy. Things like the collars on shirts, when they're all bunched up, it's hard to know exactly what should go where, especially when you can't rely on a reference. I want it to still look like a muffled collar, but I don't want it to distract so much from the portrait itself. Show a little bit more skin here. But what's interesting is when you're painting for a long time, it might not bother you. And then when you look at it again the next day, or after taking a break, you might just realize that's where my eye goes. That's a focal point I don't want. So that's when you make some adjustments. Now, because I have so many colors to choose from here, I don't need to even use a low opacity brush, because there's so many kind of rich textures and colors I can use. But then as I want to refine it, I can take that opacity down a little bit and start mixing them again. And if I want to zoom in, I can always use the navigator very easily to get me to certain areas to be able to work with it. You can see the texture of the brushes really coming through there, and now the lower opacity making some of these decisions a little bit easier. So much of digital painting is in setting up, picking the right brush settings. And it does take a lot of time, and it can be annoying, and it's not the fun part of actually painting, but if you have everything set up correctly, then you can be a lot more improvisational as you paint, and it will all work out. Because I do want it to get looser away from his head. I definitely don't want to spend as much time working on his jacket and tie and buttons. Another way to do that is to allow your brush to be a lot bigger when you're doing these kind of big areas. And sometimes a lot bigger. Going for a disheveled look. Which can be every bit as hard to accomplish as getting something to look collected and posed. All right, now because of the navigator, I can always see it in small scale as well. So I try not to get too focused on individual details. I try to look at the big picture. Bless you. And that's looking better. Let's see, that's a good shadow tone. Okay. So, with all this painting, we've built it up through direct painting most of the time. Just direct mark making using the pixels the computer gives us by customizing certain tools, which is why it's so important that we've used the resolution throughout that we've wanted. Now at the end, it depends what kind of impact we want it to have, how typical we want it to look, or how experimental. But we might approach it like we've approached projects in the past, where we actually run it through actions, try different variations. Or if I'm trying to match a style like this, I might make copies of it and then do adjustments like saturation. So it's entirely up to the personality you want your portrait or your painting to have. Now, what I like about digital painting is it gives you all those options, which is very different than painting on a canvas, where you improvise and you react to the decisions that you've made, no matter what kind of plan you started with. But once you've made some decisions, it can be very difficult to take them back or to work in between steps you've already taken. But that's not true at all in digital art. So I'm going to finish this painting in a few different ways. First, in kind of the traditional way that just uses crazier colors to give a fairly representational portrait and really shows all my work. But if there are areas that I squint and are too colorful, I can use some of the tools that we've learned, like the sponge tool. Again, you can set it to any brush, and I can desaturate those blues a little bit in that area, so they're not just so intense. But sometimes the most effective way to cancel something out is to just paint it with its complement with a low opacity over the top, like so. So there's lots of different ways we can get to the same result. If I feel there should be a little bit more red in some areas or a little bit more green, I can do that with these low opacity brushes at the end. And if I feel like some of the colors are just a little too strong and glaring for their placement in the composition, I can address that as well. I can dodge, I can burn. But how do I finish this up? Well, for this assignment, you want to take either your portrait or your animal, put it on a blank white background, and see if you like how that looks. And I don't particularly. So then you can put another plain background behind, whether it's gray or whether it's black. And what's nice about doing that is you'll see all of your choices, all of your edges. And I definitely prefer the gray to the white or the black, so I will leave it like that. I also might give it a canvas size that's a little bit larger, like we did for our poster. Give it a slight border, 1/2 inch on each side. And then I can fill that with white. Just to frame it, give me a better sense of the composition. I'll save my work as I go. And now to submit it, I simply save it as a JPEG and save my photo as my reference photo as a JPEG. I upload that and I upload that, and I am done.